So I think what inspired Pimville and its birth, maybe let's talk about its birth, is that we wanted, I mean, as Bakwena Productions, we wanted to tell stories that we always do. We always tell touching stories, in-depth stories, true, authentic South African stories that actually touch what happens in the heart of the townships. We always tell about stories about where we come from, and a true South African story. So we are not your Sandton Port. We're not going to tell you a story that's taking place in Sandton or suburbia where you're off ramp. So the minute you're on ramp onto Para, we start telling stories that happened from that on ramp. The minute you on ramp onto Katlehong, we start telling the stories that happened there. So ours is that we tell Kasi stories, but we tell Kasi stories in a different way that is real and people can relate to. Now, the one thing that we've always noted is that yes, South Africa has always told stories about apartheid. Everybody talks about Soweto uprising. Well, now we did, but actually nobody's ever told a Soweto story. And the reason that came behind that is that we looked at your Richard Maponias, your Kupani funerals, the birth of legendary brands, just like that. What we then shifted the focus, we said, let's tell a story. If we're going to tell a story, what would be the thought behind it? What really sells? Because also we need to commercialize our stories so that we get the whole nation watching. We want 44 million people to watch the show. So what is it? What stories globally have made an impact? And then we went in and then we did a deep dive and then we looked at Desperate Housewives. We're like, it's a cul-de-sac, 4 or 5 families that come in and out and they play and then people watch all the drama that takes place. That's what it is at the end of the day. So then we said, what's the one place in Soweto that has a cul-de-sac? And we said Pimville. If you can count the number of cul-de-sacs in Pimville, there are plenty and each one has a story. Everywhere you go, they'll tell you, oh, no, oh, nearly councillor, oh, nearly what. We researched all those stories about Soweto, the birth, not necessarily about its uprising, but economically, commercially, what makes Soweto the number one kasi today in South Africa. And that's what inspired us. We did a research on pioneers that exist, and more importantly, we wanted to tell a South African story, a Soweto story. And that's why we call it Pimville, because even Pimville itself is a character. As black people especially, we have not been able to portray ourselves as a leader in society. We are always augmented into believing that we are secondary. Everything that we do is secondary. Nothing that we do actually surpasses itself and can be put on a pedestal that we say that black child, you have made it. And Soweto is that story. Soweto made it during a very difficult time. And that's why we then said that let us tell not only a Soweto story, a black story that pioneers. That to say throughout the existence, we are not only underneath and we're not an understudy for a South African story. We are South African and we have succeeded in our own right. And we have a birth, we have a place in this country. And it's a black story, more importantly, but not just a black story, encompassing all cultures, colored, black, Indian, even white. I mean, there's an interesting story if you had to find out why is Pimville called Pimville. Because there was actually a councillor during the apartheid years called Mr. Pim. And that's how it came about that Pimville was called Pimville, because he wanted to accentuate the birth of a black culture that can self-exist and dominate. And I don't necessarily think it's a takeover, it's a continuation. I think we must never take away what Muvhango did, especially for a marginalized language like Chivenda. We must never take that away. What we are doing now is that we're building on top of a legacy. They set the trail for us. What we are excited about is trying to continue it, and not only that, to encompass all the other marginalized languages, which is your Sesotho-speaking languages. We're still going to have the Venda on the show. We're still going to have the Afrikaans on the show. We're bringing in Swati into the show. We're bringing Lesotho, Sesotho, Sako Lesotho into the show. When we say it's a South Africa story, it's a Southern Africa story. And it's so exciting to be part of that journey, especially with the change that SABC 2 is going to. And then for this to be the flagship show, we're part of history, and it feels good. It really does feel good, and it's special, and we're there to make it work. Done.